My life fell apart when I saw my son Michael get out of that truck with my daughter-in-law Rebecca, and I heard those words I'll never forget. "This is for our new house. You don't need this anymore." They came into my own home like thieves, carrying out my television, my refrigerator, my furniture, even the paintings that had decorated my walls for 30 years. I watched them drive away with everything I had, but when they reached the gate of their new house, something made them slam on the brakes and freeze on the spot. I never imagined my own son would be capable of such cruelty. I'm 73 years old, and for the last 50, I've lived only for him. When his father died in that terrible accident, Michael was just 15. I was widowed at 23 with empty hands and a broken heart. I remember that rainy night when I came back from the hospital, hugged my son through my tears, and swore to him that he would never lack anything. What a fool I was to believe a mother's love is always returned. I worked day and night as a seamstress in that small room at the back of the house. My fingers were covered in scars from needle pricks. My eyes grew tired under that flickering yellowish lamp, but I made every stitch thinking of him. My sewing machine became my only companion, that constant sound lulling me to sleep in the early mornings as I finished sweet 16 dresses, school uniforms, curtains for the neighbors. Everything for Michael, always for Michael. When Michael wanted to study engineering, I didn't hesitate for a second. I sold the diamond ring his father gave me on our wedding day, the gold earrings I inherited from my grandmother, even the watch he gave me on our first anniversary. Everything was turned into money for his books, his university tuition, his expenses. I clearly remember going to the pawn shop with the jewelry wrapped in a white handkerchief. The man offered me $1,200 for everything. It was little for what they were worth sentimentally, but it was enough for Michael's first tuition payment. During those 5 years of college, I worked 12 hours a day. My hands became deformed, my shoulders stooped, but every time Michael called to tell me about his classes, about his projects, I felt it was all worth it. "Mom, I'm learning so much," he'd tell me with excitement, and I would smile while my fingers bled from the needle wounds. The nights I couldn't sleep from the pain, I would get up to watch him study and feel proud of having given everything for him. I vividly remember the day he graduated. I was wearing my wine-colored dress, the only elegant one I had left, after selling almost all my clothes to pay for his expenses. I clapped until my hands hurt when they called his name. Michael looked so handsome in his black gown, so proud, so successful. I thought it had all been worth it. "Thanks, Mom. I never would have made it without you," he whispered in my ear as we posed for the photo I still keep on my nightstand. I held that image in my heart like a treasure, believing it was the beginning of a new chapter, where we could finally enjoy the fruits of so much sacrifice together. But life has cruel ways of teaching us that promises are forgotten when new priorities appear. Michael got an excellent job at a construction company, started earning more than $3,000 a month, and I thought we could finally fix up this old house, maybe travel a little, see places we always dreamed of visiting when he was little. "I'm going to buy you a new house soon, Mom," he would promise every time he came to visit. However, things didn't turn out as I expected. For months, I continued mending other people's clothes, saving every penny I earned, dreaming of the day my son would tell me I didn't need to work anymore. But instead, Michael started coming home less often. His calls became sporadic, and when we talked, he seemed distant, as if I were a nuisance in his new successful life. His visits went from weekly to monthly, then to occasional. He always had an excuse: too much work, important projects, client meetings. One day he arrived with news that would change everything forever. He had a strange, nervous smile, and his hands trembled as he sat at my old kitchen table. "Mom, I want you to meet someone very special," he said, and for a moment my heart filled with hope. I thought I would finally have a daughter-in-law who would help me take care of him, who would give me grandchildren to fill this silent house. How wrong I was. The first time I saw Rebecca, I knew immediately that I had lost my son forever. Michael came home that Sunday afternoon with a tall, thin woman with perfectly styled blonde hair and long red nails that looked like claws. She was wearing a coral dress that cost more than my entire wardrobe combined, and high heels that echoed on my cement floor like hammers on my heart. From the moment she crossed the threshold, her eyes scanned my humble home with a look of contempt she didn't bother to hide. "Mom, this is Rebecca, my girlfriend," Michael said, in a voice I had never heard before, as if he were apologizing for something. I wiped my hands on my apron and extended my arm to greet her, but she barely grazed my hand with her fingertips, as if afraid of catching my poverty. "Nice to meet you, ma'am," she murmured, without looking me in the eye, while taking a small tissue from her purse to wipe her hands after touching me. "Please sit down. I'll make some coffee," I said, trying to sound cheerful, although inside I felt a tightness in my chest I couldn't explain. While the water boiled in my old coffee pot, I could hear their whispers from the living room. "Michael, did you really grow up here?" she asked in a low voice, but loud enough for me to hear. "It's temporary, love. You know we're saving for our house," my son answered with a shame-filled voice that broke my soul. When I returned with the coffee in my best cups, the few I had left from my porcelain set, Rebecca looked at them as if they were dirty containers. "Thank you, but I don't drink coffee," she said, pushing the cup away with her hand. "Do you have organic green tea or imported mineral water?" My heart sank because I knew I had none of what she asked for. "I only have tap water," I murmured, feeling small in my own house. "Oh, don't worry, I'm not thirsty," she replied with a fake smile that didn't reach her cold eyes. During that first visit, Rebecca didn't stop making hurtful comments disguised as innocent questions. "How long has it been since you painted the house? Is this sofa an antique? You don't have air conditioning." Every word was like a slap in the face that my son didn't defend me from. On the contrary, Michael looked embarrassed and looked at me as if I were guilty of not having a more presentable house for his perfect girlfriend. "Michael told me you work as a seamstress," Rebecca said, examining my calloused, stained hands from years of work. "How quaint. It must be hard to get by on that these days." Her tone was condescending, as if talking to a small child. "I do all right, thank you," I replied, trying to maintain my dignity, though inside I felt humiliated. "Well, at least Michael doesn't need you to support him anymore, right? He earns enough now to take care of himself." Those words were like a dagger in my heart. For years I had dreamed of the day Michael would be independent, but I never imagined it would mean I was disposable in his life. "Mom will always be important to me," Michael muttered, but his voice sounded weak without conviction. Rebecca took his arm possessively and smiled. "Of course, love, but it's time for you to start your own family, don't you think?" The following months were a slow and constant torture. Rebecca managed to isolate Michael from me little by little. First it was the visits. "We can't come this Sunday. Love, we have plans," she'd tell him every time he mentioned coming to see me. Then it was the calls. "Michael is very busy. Mrs. Julia, I'll tell him to call you later." She would answer when I dialed his phone. And then came the lies, the subtle manipulations that poisoned my son's mind against me. "Your mom is very dependent on you, Michael," I heard her say once when they thought I wasn't nearby. "A mother who truly loves her son wants to see him fly. She doesn't keep him tied down with guilt and needs." My hands trembled as I pretended to wash the dishes, feeling those poisonous words stabbing into my soul. "You have to think about our future. You can't keep being a mama's boy forever." Little by little, Michael began to change with me. His hugs became mechanical. His smiles forced his visits an obligation rather than a pleasure. When we spoke on the phone, he always seemed to be in a hurry to hang up. "How are you, my son?" I'd ask, and he'd respond with monosyllables. "Fine, Mom. Busy. I'll call you later." But those laters came less and less frequently. The first time Rebecca came to my house alone was on a Tuesday morning. I was sewing a wedding dress, working on the delicate embroidery that would take me weeks to complete when I heard her heels at my door. "Hello, mother-in-law," she said with that fake smile I knew so well. "I need to talk to you about something important." My heart started beating faster because her tone didn't bode well. "It's about Michael and me," she began, as she sat on the edge of my sofa, careful not to touch the worn-out cushions. "We're getting married soon, and we're looking at houses to buy. We found a beautiful 1-3 bedrooms with a large garden in a very exclusive neighborhood." My eyes filled with tears of joy, because I thought she was coming to invite me to the wedding, maybe to ask me to be part of the preparations. "How wonderful!" I exclaimed, setting my sewing aside. "When is the wedding? How can I help?" But Rebecca's smile turned colder, more calculating. "Well, that's exactly what I want to talk to you about, mother-in-law. You see, the house costs a lot of money. It's $200,000, and although Michael earns well, we need to make some adjustments to our expenses." I didn't understand where the conversation was going, but something in her tone sent a chill down my spine. "Michael spends a lot of money visiting you, buying you things, worrying about you," she continued in a sweet but venomous voice. "And we need every penny for our future together. A mother who truly loves her son would want to see him prosper, don't you think?" "Of course I want to see Michael happy," I replied, confused. "I've always wanted the best for him." Rebecca nodded, as if she were a teacher explaining something to a slow student. "Then you'll understand that it's time for you to stop being a burden to him. Michael needs to focus on his new family, not be constantly worried about his mom." Rebecca's words fell on me like blocks of ice. "A burden," I repeated, feeling my voice break. "I've never been a burden to Michael. I worked my whole life so he could study, so he could have everything he needed." But she looked at me with that cruel smile I was beginning to know too well, as if my words were the complaints of a spoiled child. "Oh, mother-in-law, this isn't about the past," Rebecca said, crossing her perfect legs and adjusting the pearl necklace she was wearing. "This is about the present and the future. Michael is no longer a child who needs his mom to support him. Now he has a man's responsibilities with me, with the family we're going to build." Every word was like a needle piercing my heart. "He needs to focus on us, not be divided between his wife and his mom." "But I just want to be part of his life," I murmured, feeling tears begin to cloud my vision. "I don't ask for much, just for him to visit me once in a while, for us to talk on the phone." Rebecca sighed as if she were dealing with a very difficult person. "That's exactly the problem, Mrs. Julia. You don't understand that Michael no longer belongs to you. Now he belongs to me." Her words hit me like a slap. "Children don't belong to anyone," I managed to say in a whisper. "I love him, but I've never tried to possess him." Rebecca laughed, a dry, calculating laugh. "Really? Then why is it that every time Michael wants to do something with me, you show up with some need, some problem, some tear? Why do you always have to remind him of everything you did for him?" "I never." I started to protest, but she cut me off with a wave of her perfectly manicured hand. "Michael tells me everything, Mrs. Julia. He tells me how you constantly remind him that you sold your jewelry for him, that you worked day and night, that you sacrificed. That's called emotional blackmail, and Michael is tired of carrying that guilt." My world began to crumble. Was what she said true? Did Michael really feel guilty when I reminded him of everything we'd been through together? I thought those were beautiful memories, testaments to our mother-son love, but maybe, just maybe, Rebecca was right, and I had been suffocating my son without realizing it. "I see you're starting to understand," Rebecca continued, seeing my expression of confusion and pain. "Michael needs space to grow to be the man I need him to be. And you, with all due respect, are not helping him. You're keeping him like a dependent child who has to choose between his mom and his wife." She got up from the sofa and walked to the window, looking out at the street as if my house bored her deeply. "What do you want me to do?" I asked in a broken voice, feeling defeated before I even knew the answer. Rebecca turned to me with a smile that didn't reach her cold eyes. "It's very simple, mother-in-law. Give Michael the space he needs. Stop calling him so much. Stop asking him to come visit. Stop making him feel guilty for having a new life." She paused calculatedly before continuing. "And most importantly, stop depending on him financially." "Financially?" I repeated, confused. "But I don't depend on Michael. I work, I support myself." Rebecca let out another one of those hurtful laughs. "Please, Mrs. Julia, don't play dumb. Michael told me he helps you with house expenses, that he buys you medicine, that he gives you money for your needs. That has to stop." The truth was that Michael, on his own initiative, had been helping me with some expenses. When my old heater broke last winter, he had insisted on buying me a new one. When I got sick with the flu and needed expensive medication, he had gone to the pharmacy without me asking. "He helps me because he wants to," I murmured weakly. "I've never asked him for anything." "That's what you think," Rebecca replied cruelly. "But Michael tells me he feels obligated to take care of you because you always remind him how lonely you are, how hard it is for a woman your age to get by. That's also emotional manipulation, Mrs. Julia." I fell silent, feeling each of her words shatter me inside. Was it true that I had been manipulating my son without realizing it? Were my tears, my worries, our shared memories, really a form of blackmail? I began to doubt everything, every conversation I'd had with Michael, every moment we had shared. "I see you're thinking it over," Rebecca said with satisfaction, like a predator who knows its prey is wounded. "That's good. It means you really love Michael and want what's best for him." She came closer and put her cold hand on my shoulder. "If you truly love him, let him go. Let him be happy with me." "And if I do that," I asked, my voice barely audible, "if I step back, if I stop calling him, if I refuse his help, he will be happy?" Rebecca smiled, as if she had won an important battle. "Of course he will. Michael and I will build a beautiful life together. We'll have children, a house of our own travels adventures. Everything he deserves after so many years of sacrifice." And I murmured, feeling my heart break into 1,000 pieces. What will become of me? For the first time, Rebecca's mask slipped slightly, and I could see the true coldness of her soul. "You've already lived your life, Mrs. Julia. You had your husband, you had your son, you fulfilled your role as a mother. Now it's time for you to let Michael live his." She walked to the door with confident steps, as if she had just completed a successful mission. Before leaving, she turned one last time. "I hope we can be a happy family mother-in-law, but that will only be possible if you understand your place in Michael's life now." And with those words, she left my house, leaving me alone, with a silence that felt like a tomb. I sat on my sofa for hours watching the daylight slowly fade as I processed every word Rebecca had said. Was it true that I had been suffocating Michael? Had my expressions of love really become chains that tied him to a past he wanted to leave behind? Doubt began to eat away at my soul like a slow but relentless acid. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling of my room, replaying every recent conversation with Michael, analyzing every gesture, every word, searching for signs that Rebecca was right. Maybe when I told him about my health problems, he wasn't worried out of love, but out of obligation. Maybe when I reminded him of our moments together, he didn't smile out of nostalgia, but out of duty. At dawn, I made a decision that would change everything forever. If Rebecca was right, if I was truly an obstacle to my son's happiness, then I would have to step away. Because if there's one thing a mother must do above all else, it's to ensure her son's happiness, even if it means sacrificing her own. Over the next few weeks, I began to distance myself from Michael gradually. When he called, I kept the conversations short and superficial. When he offered to visit, I made excuses to avoid it. When he insisted on helping me with money, I politely refused, saying I no longer needed it. Every rejection was like tearing a piece of my heart out, but I thought it was the right thing to do. Michael immediately noticed the change in my behavior, and at first he seemed confused and worried. "Mom, are you okay? You seem different," he would ask during our brief phone conversations. "I'm perfectly fine, sweetie, just busy with my sewing," I'd reply, faking a cheerfulness I didn't feel. But inside, every word was like swallowing broken glass. "Why don't you want me to visit? We haven't seen each other in weeks," he insisted, his voice sounding genuinely hurt. For a moment, my resolve wavered, and I was about to tell him the truth, to confess what Rebecca had told me, but then I remembered her words. A mother who truly loves her son wants to see him prosper. So I took a deep breath and lied. "I've just been very busy, Michael. I have a lot of dress orders and no free time." But Rebecca was smart, very smart. She knew exactly how to interpret my distance for her own benefit. "See, love," she would say to Michael after our cold conversations. "Your mom is fine. She's busy with her life. She doesn't need you like she used to. That's good. It means you can be independent." And Michael, my poor innocent. Michael began to believe that my withdrawal was a sign that I was better, not that I was dying inside. The months passed like a silent nightmare. My days were filled with loneliness and mechanical work. I sewed dresses without joy, ate without appetite, slept without rest. The house that once filled with Michael's visits now felt like a mausoleum. Every corner reminded me of him, the chair where he sat to tell me about his work, the table where we ate together on Sundays, the picture of his graduation that still sat on my nightstand, like a reminder of happier times. It was around then that Michael came one day with news that, although expected, completely shattered me. "Mom, Rebecca, and I are getting married in 3 months," he announced with a smile that tried to look happy but couldn't hide a certain sadness. "Aren't you going to congratulate me?" I forced the biggest smile I could and hugged him. "Of course, sweetie, I'm very happy for you. Rebecca is a special girl. I want you to know that even though I'm getting married, you'll always be important to me," Michael murmured against my shoulder during that hug, which I knew might be one of the last. I closed my eyes and etched the smell of his hair, the warmth of his hug, the sound of his breathing into my memory. "I know, sweetie, and I want you to be very happy with her." The wedding took place in an elegant ballroom downtown. I arrived alone, wearing my best violet dress, the one I had sewn especially for the occasion. I sat in the front row, but I felt like a stranger at my own son's life celebration. Rebecca was radiant in her designer white dress that cost more than I earned in a year. Michael looked handsome in his tuxedo, but throughout the ceremony he avoided looking where I was sitting. During the reception, I stayed at my assigned table eating in silence as I watched my son dance with his new wife. Several times I tried to approach them to congratulate them, but there was always a group of Rebecca's friends surrounding them, elegant people talking about trips to Europe, investments, houses in exclusive neighborhoods. I didn't fit into that world, and I knew it. "Mother-in-law, so glad you could make it," Rebecca said when I finally managed to get close to them. Her smile was perfect for the cameras, but her eyes sent me a clear message. "You've played your part, now you can leave. Congratulations," I managed to say, hugging her briefly. "I hope you'll be very happy." "Oh, we will be," she replied with a confidence that chilled me to the bone. Michael and I have so many plans together. After the wedding, Michael's visits became even more sporadic. "We're very busy fixing up the new house," he'd explain when I called him. "Rebecca wants everything to be perfect before we move in completely." I would nod and pretend to understand, but inside, I felt like I was losing my son piece by piece, as if every day that passed, he moved further away from the boy I once held in my arms, who promised we would always be together. The new house that Michael spoke of with such pride became a symbol of everything I couldn't give him. "It has 3 bedrooms, Mom, a big yard, a 2-car garage," he told me excitedly. "We're decorating it little by little. Rebecca has very good taste for these things." Every description was like a stab, because it made me aware of how small, how old, how inadequate my humble home was in comparison. "And when are you moving?" I asked one day, though part of me didn't want to know the answer. "In 2 months," Michael replied. "We have almost everything ready. We just need a few appliances and some furniture." There was an awkward pause in the conversation, as if he wanted to say something else but didn't dare. "Is something wrong, sweetie?" I asked, feeling a knot in my stomach. "Well, Mom, Rebecca and I have been talking," he began in a rehearsed-sounding voice. "We realized you have a lot of things in your house that you don't use anymore, things that could be useful for us to start our new life." My heart started beating faster, because I sensed where the conversation was going. "What kind of things?" I murmured. "Well, your TV is very big for one person, don't you think? And your refrigerator, too. Rebecca says an older person doesn't need such a big fridge." His words were like knives sinking into my soul. "And you have those beautiful paintings in the living room that would look perfect in our new house. Dad bought them with so much love, and Rebecca thinks it would be nice for them to stay in the family." I was silent for several seconds, processing what my son was asking of me. They weren't just objects. They were the last vestiges of the life I had built with his father, the tangible memories of our family. "Michael," I managed to say, my voice trembling, Those things are all I have left of your dad, of our life together. But Mom, it's not like we're going to steal them from you, he replied with a nervous chuckle that broke my heart. You can always come visit us and see them. Besides, aren't you happy to know they'll be with your son? His words were exactly what Rebecca had taught him to say. I could feel her poisonous influence in every syllable. And what if I don't want to give them to you? I asked in a whisper, though I knew I had already lost the battle before it began. Michael sighed as if he were dealing with a spoiled child. Mom, don't be selfish. Rebecca and I are starting a life together. We need all the help we can get. You've already lived your life now, it's our turn. Those words, "You've already lived your life," stabbed my heart like poisoned daggers. It was exactly what Rebecca had told me months ago, and now they were coming from my own son's mouth. All right, I murmured, feeling defeated. You can take what you need. Thanks, Mom. I knew you'd understand, Michael exclaimed with genuine joy, as if he had just received the best gift in the world. I hung up the phone and sat on my sofa, looking at all the objects that would soon leave my house empty. The television where Michael and I watched movies on Sunday afternoons. The refrigerator his father had bought when Michael was little, telling me, "So our family will never lack food." The paintings we had chosen together on our first wedding anniversary, when we still believed we had a whole life to fill the walls with memories. I couldn't sleep a wink that night. I stayed awake imagining what my house would be like after Michael and Rebecca took everything. Without the TV, the nights would be even quieter and lonelier. Without the refrigerator, I would have to buy food day by day like a helpless old woman. Without the paintings, the walls would be bare, soulless, a constant reminder of everything I had lost. But what hurt the most was knowing that those objects laden with so many loving memories would now adorn the house of a woman who despised me. The following days were a mix of anxiety and anticipated sadness. Every time I looked at my belongings, I felt like I was saying goodbye to old friends who would soon be gone forever. I caressed the surface of the television, remembering the afternoons Michael and I spent watching his favorite cartoons when he was a child. I opened and closed the refrigerator door, thinking of all the meals I had prepared in there for my family. I sat in front of the paintings trying to memorize every detail, every color, every brushstroke that once filled my home with life. Michael didn't call again during those 2 weeks. I supposed he was busy organizing the move, or maybe Rebecca had told him it was better not to talk to me until the day came to take the things. The uncertainty gnawed at me. I didn't know exactly when they would come, what they would take besides what we had agreed upon, or if Michael would come alone or with his wife. Meanwhile, I tried to keep busy with my sewing, but my hands trembled so much that several times I had to undo entire seams because I had sewn them crooked. My concentration was fragmented, my heart broken into 1,000 pieces, and my eyes were constantly clouded with tears that refused to stop falling. Clients began to ask if I was feeling well because my work wasn't up to its usual quality. "Mrs. Julia, are you sick?" asked Mrs. Linda, my next-door neighbor, when she ran into me at the market. I hadn't been eating properly for days and had lost several pounds, which showed on my gaunt face. "No, I'm not sick," I lied, trying to smile, "just a little tired from work." But Linda had known me for years and could see that something deeper was consuming me. "And Michael, I haven't seen him around here in a while," she commented as we picked out vegetables at the usual stand. "He got married recently," I managed to say, without my voice completely breaking. "He's very busy with his new life." Linda nodded sympathetically, but I could see in her eyes that she had caught all the sadness I was trying to hide. "Children grow up and start their own families," she murmured, squeezing my arm affectionately. "But that doesn't mean they stop loving us." If only she knew the truth, I thought as I walked home carrying a shopping bag that felt like it weighed a ton. If she knew that my son was about to empty my house, that his wife had made me understand I was no longer welcome in his life, that every day I felt more invisible and disposable. But I couldn't tell anyone that because saying it out loud would make it all too real, too painful. The day came on a Tuesday morning. I heard the sound of the truck before I saw it, that metallic, deafening noise that announced the moment I had been dreading had arrived. I peeked through the window and saw Michael getting out of the cab, along with 2 men I didn't know, probably the workers he had hired for the move. Rebecca came in her own car, a silver sedan she parked right behind the truck. My heart was beating so hard I thought it would burst out of my chest. My hands were sweating as I opened the door to greet them, trying to muster a smile that wouldn't fool anyone. "Hi, sweetie," I managed to say as Michael came to greet me. His hug was quick and mechanical, like someone fulfilling a social obligation rather than a gesture of love. "Hi, Mom. We brought help to make it faster," he said, pointing to the two men who were already unloading straps and ropes from the truck. "We don't want to bother you for too long." His words, though meant to be considerate, sounded as if my presence was indeed a bother he wanted to minimize as much as possible. Rebecca approached, dressed in tight jeans and a gold-colored blouse that matched her diamond earrings. Her hair was pulled back in a perfect ponytail, and she wore expensive sunglasses that she didn't take off even when she entered my house. "Hello, mother-in-law," she greeted me with that fake smile I knew so well. "How exciting! We're finally going to put all this stuff to good use." "Ma'am, where do we start?" one of the workers asked, addressing Rebecca, not me, as if she were the owner of my belongings. "First, the television," she replied, walking into my living room as if she were a buyer evaluating merchandise in a store. "That will look perfect in our main living room, and then the refrigerator, but be careful, because it's heavy." I stood frozen in the doorway of my own home, watching as these strangers began to dismantle the television that had been the center of so many family nights. Michael helped by disconnecting cables, but he avoided looking at me. It was as if my presence made him uncomfortable, as if I were an awkward reminder of something he preferred to forget. "And these paintings?" Rebecca asked, pointing to the pictures his late father had bought with such love. "They're beautiful." "They'll look gorgeous in the dining room of our new house." She walked over to one of them, a mountain landscape that had been hanging on that wall for over 20 years, and touched it as if it already belonged to her. "Be careful, they're very delicate," I murmured, finding my voice for the first time since they had arrived. "My husband bought them on our honeymoon." Rebecca looked at me over her dark glasses with an expression that mixed impatience with condescension. "Don't worry, mother-in-law. We'll take good care of them. Besides, this way they'll still be part of the family." "But they wouldn't be part of my family," I thought bitterly. "They would be decoration in the house of a woman who had done everything possible to erase me from it." Every time Michael saw them, he would no longer remember his father or our moments together. He would remember the new life he had built without me. The workers continued to dismantle my belongings with professional efficiency, but I felt like they were dismantling my soul piece by piece. The television went first, carried by two men who had no idea how many movie nights I had watched there with my son. Then came the paintings wrapped in blankets, as if they were corpses prepared for burial. "This is for our new house. You don't need this anymore," I heard Rebecca say to Michael as she supervised the transfer of the refrigerator. Her words echoed in my head, a painful reminder of everything I had lost. I no longer needed the TV because I no longer had anyone to watch movies with. I no longer needed the large refrigerator because I would no longer be cooking for a family. I no longer needed the paintings because I no longer had beautiful memories to preserve. Michael finally approached me as the workers were loading the last things onto the truck. "Mom, I really appreciate you helping us out," he said, avoiding my gaze. "This means a lot to us, especially to Rebecca. She's very excited to decorate our house." "I'm glad you're happy," I managed to say, though each word burned my throat. "That's all that matters." Michael nodded in relief, as if he had been afraid I would make a scene or change my mind at the last minute. "You're the best mom in the world," he mumbled, giving me another quick hug. "I promise we'll come visit soon." But we both knew that promise was empty, a social courtesy said, but not meant. Rebecca had already achieved her goal. She had gotten Michael to distance himself from me voluntarily, and now she had taken the last physical remnants of our life together. There was no reason for them to return to this empty house where an old woman who had served her purpose in their lives now lived. I watched them get into the truck and their car ready to leave for their new life, filled with my memories turned into their decor. Michael waved at me from the truck's window, and for a moment I saw a shadow of the sadness I felt on his face. Perhaps deep in his heart, he also knew that something precious between us had been broken forever. The truck started with a roar of its engine that drowned out any farewell words I might have wanted to say. I watched them drive down the street, taking not only my belongings, but also the last pieces of the family we once were. I stood in the doorway of my now empty and silent house, feeling as if I had just witnessed my own funeral. When I closed the door after watching the truck disappear in the distance, the silence that filled my house was deafening. It was a kind of silence I had never experienced before, so deep and empty that it seemed to have its own weight. My footsteps echoed against the bare walls like ghosts of a life that no longer existed. The rectangular faded spots on the wall where the paintings had hung for decades looked like open wounds screaming of the absence of everything that had given this place meaning. I walked to the kitchen, and the empty space where my refrigerator had been hit me like a slap. For over 20 years, that corner had been the heart of my home, where I kept the food I bought with Michael in mind, where I chilled his favorite drinks for when he visited. Now, it was just a square of floor cleaner than the rest, a ghostly mark of what my family life once was. The living room looked pathetically empty without the television. The stand where it had rested for so many years now looked bare and purposeless, covered in a light layer of dust that marked exactly where the device had been. I sat on my old sofa, the only large piece of furniture they hadn't taken, and looked at the empty space where Michael and I used to watch the news together every night, where he would tell me about his day while we ate dinner. The first few nights were the hardest. Without the familiar sound of the television, the house was filled with noises I had never noticed before. The ticking of the wall clock, which now seemed deafening, the creaking of the old wood, settling the whisper of the wind seeping through the poorly sealed windows. Every sound startled me and reminded me of how alone I was, how vulnerable I had become without the familiar things that gave me a sense of normalcy. Eating became a daily torture. Without a refrigerator, I had to buy small portions of fresh food every day, which meant walking to the market with my shopping cart like a helpless old woman. The vegetables spoiled quickly in the heat, the milk soured in a few hours, and many times I ended up eating dry bread with tea because I had neither the energy nor the desire to cook for just one person. Mrs. Linda, my neighbor, was the first to notice the changes. "Julia, what happened to your television?" she asked when she came over to borrow some sugar one afternoon. "I always see the light from it at night." I didn't know what to say without sounding pathetic, so I made up a weak excuse. It broke and I took it to be repaired. But Linda had eagle eyes and had seen the truck that Tuesday morning. "And your refrigerator broke too?" she asked, looking towards the kitchen with growing curiosity. Her questions made me nervous because I didn't want anyone to know the humiliating truth of what had happened. I'm remodeling the kitchen," I lied awkwardly. "Michael is going to help me pick out new appliances." The lie tasted bitter in my mouth, but it was better than admitting that my own son had left me without the basic necessities to live with dignity. The nights became endless. Without a TV to distract me, I sat in the dark because even the light bulbs seemed too bright in the absolute solitude. My thoughts turned into a whirlwind of self-reproach. Had I really been a possessive mother, as Rebecca said? Had I suffocated Michael with my love to the point where he needed to completely distance himself from me just to breathe? I replayed every conversation we'd had in recent years, analyzing every word, every gesture, looking for signs that he felt burdened by my presence. Maybe when I told him about my health problems, he interpreted it as manipulation. Maybe when I reminded him of past sacrifices, he saw it as emotional blackmail. Maybe Rebecca was right, and I had been blind to my own flaws as a mother. The weeks dragged on like wounded snails. Michael didn't call once to ask how I was, if I needed anything, or just to say hello. His silence was more painful than any cruel word he could have said. It was as if, after taking my things, he had also erased my existence from his mind and heart. I started losing weight because cooking for one person felt useless and depressing. My clothes were loose, my cheeks gaunt, and my eyes were surrounded by deep, dark circles that spoke of sleepless nights. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a defeated old woman who seemed to have aged 10 years in just a few weeks. My sewing, which had been my livelihood and my pride for decades, began to suffer. My hands trembled so much from sadness that I couldn't make straight stitches. My eyes constantly filled with tears, couldn't focus on the fine details. Several clients complained about the quality of my work, and some canceled their orders, taking their fabrics to another seamstress, Mrs. "Julia, this hem is completely crooked," said a woman who had come to pick up her daughter's dress, "and these buttons are misaligned. This isn't the quality work you're used to doing." Her words felt like salt in an open wound, because she was right. My work had become sloppy, a reflection of the emotional chaos I was living inside. The loss of income from my faulty sewing sent me into an even deeper spiral of despair. Not only had I lost my son and my most cherished belongings, but now I was also losing my ability to support myself financially. The few savings I had were quickly depleted buying food day by day without being able to store anything. One night as I lay awake in my bed, listening to the terrifying sounds of the empty house, I made a desperate decision. I reached for the phone and dialed Michael's number. My heart was pounding so hard I thought he could hear it through the phone line. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times before it was answered. "Hello?" answered Rebecca's voice, cold and annoyed by the late call. "Rebecca, it's Julia," I murmured, feeling my courage fade. "I need to speak with Michael, please." There was a long, calculated silence before she replied. "Michael is busy, Mrs. Julia." "What do you need him for?" "It's just, I need help with a few things," I admitted, feeling humiliated but desperate. "Without the refrigerator, I can't keep food, and without the TV, the nights are very long, and—" "Mrs. Julia," Rebecca interrupted me with a tone that mixed impatience with condescension. "We thought you understood that Michael needs space to focus on his new life." "I just need to talk to him for 5 minutes," I pleaded, hating myself for sounding so pathetic. "He's my son. I have a right to—" "Michael is sleeping," she cut me off abruptly, "and he has a very long day at work tomorrow. Besides, you yourself told us you didn't need those things. You can't change your mind now." The line went dead before I could respond, leaving me with the phone in my hand and a shattered heart. Rebecca had answered Michael's phone as if she were his personal gatekeeper, deciding who could speak to him and who couldn't. And I, his own mother, had been classified as a nuisance to be filtered and blocked. That night I cried until I had no tears left, feeling my soul tear into irreparable pieces. I had not only lost my son, I had lost my dignity, my home, my livelihood, and my reason for living. I had become an invisible, disposable old woman whose only function had been to raise and sacrifice for a son who now saw her as an obstacle in his perfect life. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months of an existence I could barely call life. I woke up each morning with no purpose, dragging my bare feet across the cold floor of my empty house. The bathroom mirror reflected the image of a woman I no longer recognized, haggard, with unkempt gray hair, sunken and lifeless eyes, as if my soul had slowly escaped, leaving only a hollow shell. My savings ran out completely 3 months after Michael took my appliances. Unable to keep fresh food, and with my sewing work deteriorating daily, I barely earned enough to buy bread and milk. Some nights I went to bed with an empty stomach, listening to it roar with hunger as I tried to convince myself that things would get better the next day. But every dawn brought the same cruel reality, an abandoned old woman struggling to survive in a house that had become her prison. The humiliation reached its lowest point when Mrs. Linda brought me a plate of homemade food. "Julia, I made you chicken and rice. I thought you might like it," she said with a smile that couldn't hide the worry in her eyes. I knew she had noticed my weight loss, my sunken cheeks, the way my clothes hung on me like a rag on a skeleton. "You didn't have to bother," I murmured, feeling tears welling up. "It's no bother, Julia. That's what neighbors are for," Linda replied as she handed me the steaming plate. The aroma of chicken and rice made me salivate immediately, and my stomach growled so loudly we both heard it. "When was the last time you had a full meal?" she asked gently but firmly. I couldn't answer because the truth was too humiliating. It had been 3 days since I had eaten anything but dry bread and tea. That night, as I savored every spoonful of the chicken and rice as if it were the most exquisite delicacy in the world, I realized I had hit rock bottom. I had become an old woman who depended on the charity of her neighbors because her own son had abandoned her. The irony was bitter. For years I had sacrificed so that Michael would never go hungry, and now I was the one going to bed with an empty stomach while he dined in his new house with his new appliances and his wife who had pushed me away. It was during that time of absolute desperation that the letter arrived that would change my life forever. It was an elegant envelope of thick, cream-colored paper with my name written in perfect calligraphy that I didn't immediately recognize. The return address was from a law firm downtown, which filled me with panic because I thought maybe I had forgotten debts or some legal problem I didn't understand. I opened it with trembling hands, expecting a lawsuit or an eviction notice, but what I found left me completely breathless. It was a formal letter from a lawyer named Mr. Martinez, but attached was another personal letter written in a handwriting I recognized immediately, even though I hadn't seen it in over 50 years. My heart began to pound so hard I thought it would burst out of my chest as I read the signature at the end. Vincent Herrera. My dearest Julia. The letter began with that elegant script that instantly transported me back to being 17. After so many years of searching for you, my private investigator finally managed to find you. You don't know how many nights I've thought of you, how many times I've wondered what became of the most beautiful and kind-hearted woman I have ever known. I know decades have passed since we parted, and I know we both took different paths, but never, not for a single day, did I stop loving you. My hands were shaking so much I had to sit down to continue reading. Vincent had been my first love, my teenage boyfriend, the man I had dreamed of marrying before I met Michael's father. But life had separated us when he went to study medicine in another city, and I stayed here caring for my sick mother. Later I heard he had married a doctor, had a very successful clinic, and had started a family. I never thought that after so many years he would still remember me. 2 years ago, I lost my wife after a long battle with cancer. The letter continued. She was a wonderful woman, and we were happy together, but her passing made me reflect on the time we have left and the opportunities we let slip by. During her illness, she confessed to me that she knew a part of my heart had always belonged to another woman, to my first love whom I could never completely forget. Tears began to roll down my cheeks as I read his words. After so many years of feeling invisible, disposable, unloved, someone was writing to tell me they had thought of me for decades. My wife made me promise that after her death I would seek the happiness I deserved, even if it meant finding that woman from the past who never completely left my heart. That's why I've been looking for you, Julia. Because I want to know if there's any chance we could meet again, get to know each other anew, and perhaps build the years we have left together. My heart was pounding so hard, it sounded like a drum echoing in my empty chest. Vincent told me that after selling his clinic, he had invested in real estate and had been very successful. He had a large house on the outskirts of the city, traveled the world, but felt profoundly lonely. I am 75 years old, Julia, and I no longer want to wake up every morning in a silent house remembering what could have been. If you are still alive, if you are still single, if there is any chance you would want to see me, please contact my lawyer. The letter included a phone number and an address, as well as a recent photograph of Vincent that took my breath away. He was still a handsome, distinguished man with completely white hair, but the same kind eyes I remembered from our youth. He was wearing an elegant suit and smiled with that same shy smile that I had fallen in love with when we were teenagers. I have built a prosperous but empty life, he wrote in the final paragraphs. I have money, properties, travels, but I have no one to share a coffee with in the mornings or a movie at night. I have no one waiting for me when I come home, no one who worries if I'm late, no one who knows my stories from the past or with whom to create new memories. If you decide you want to meet the man I've become, I promise I will do everything I can to make you happy for the time we have left. I read the letter 3 full times before I could completely process it. After months of feeling like a disposable old woman whose only function in life was over someone, was telling me I was valuable, I was remembered, I was desired. Vincent didn't know me as the mother who had failed, as the awkward mother-in-law, as the woman who was in the way of others' perfect lives. To him, I was still Julia, the young woman he had fallen in love with decades ago. I couldn't sleep a minute that night. I stayed awake reading and rereading the letter, looking at Vincent's photograph, remembering our walks in the park when we were young, our dreams of the future, our promises of eternal love that life had interrupted. Was it possible that after so much pain, so much loneliness, so much rejection, destiny was offering me a second chance to be happy? At dawn, I made a decision that required all the courage I had left in my soul. I bathed carefully, put on my best lavender dress, fixed my hair as best I could without a decent mirror, and walked to the public phone on the corner. With trembling hands, I dialed the number for Mr. Martinez that was in the letter. "Good morning, this is Julia Morales," I said when they answered. "I received a letter from Mr. Vincent Herrera, and I would like to see him." On the other end of the line, I heard a sigh of relief and joy. "Mrs. Morales, Mr. Herrera will be so happy to hear you called. He has been waiting by the phone for days. Would it be all right if we meet this afternoon at my office to arrange the details of the meeting?" That afternoon, I went to Mr. Martinez's law firm with a mix of nervousness and hope I hadn't felt in decades. I had put on my best lavender dress, the only one that still fit me well, after losing so much weight, and I had tried to fix my hair as best as possible. But when I arrived at the elegant office building in the city center, I felt small and inadequate among all the people dressed in expensive suits and shiny shoes. The lawyer's office was impressive with mahogany furniture, Persian rugs, and huge windows overlooking the entire city. I sat in a leather chair that probably cost more than all my furniture combined, feeling my sweaty hands stain the elegant material. "Mrs. Morales," Mr. Martinez said with a genuine smile, "you don't know how happy I am to meet you. Herrera has told me so much about you that I feel like I already know you. He really wants to see me after all these years." I asked, my voice trembling. The lawyer nodded enthusiastically. "Ma'am, in my 30 years of career, I have seen many stories, but rarely have I seen someone as emotional as Mr. Herrera. When I told him we had found you, he cried with joy, literally cried. His words filled my heart with a warmth I had forgotten existed. Mr. Herrera would like to invite you to dinner tomorrow night at the Palace Hotel." The lawyer continued, handing me an elegant envelope. "Here is the address and all the details. He will take care of everything, the transportation, the dinner, everything you need." I opened the envelope and found not only the formal invitation, but also a check for $500. "What is this?" I murmured, confused. "Mr. Herrera insists that you buy a new dress for the occasion," the lawyer explained gently. "He says he wants you to feel like a queen as you should have always felt." My eyes filled with tears because it had been so long since anyone had cared about my well-being, my happiness, about making me feel special. "I can't accept this," I murmured, looking at the check. "It's too much." "Mrs. Morales," the lawyer said, leaning forward with a serious expression, "Mr. Herrera is a very wealthy man, but more importantly, he is a man who has waited more than 50 years for this moment. Please allow him to spoil you a little. He has earned it after waiting so long." His words convinced me, not because of the money, but because of the genuine love that shone through in every one of Vincent's gestures. I left the law firm with my heart full of conflicting emotions. For the first time in months, I felt hope, but also terror. What if Vincent was disappointed when he saw me? I was no longer the 17-year-old girl he had fallen in love with. I was 73, with wrinkles gray hair, hands deformed by years of sewing and hard work. What could a successful man, who could probably choose any woman, see in me? But I decided not to sabotage this opportunity with my insecurities. The next day, I went to the most elegant shopping mall in the city, a place I had never entered because everything was too expensive for my budget. With Vincent's check in my purse, I went to a boutique that sold dresses for special occasions. "Good morning. How can I help you?" A young, elegant saleswoman asked me initially, looking at me with some disdain, probably thinking I didn't have the money to buy anything in that store. "I need a dress for a very special dinner," I said with more confidence than I actually felt. "Something elegant but appropriate for a woman my age." The saleswoman showed me several dresses, but when she saw that I was willing to spend real money, her attitude changed completely. She helped me try on a beautiful coral-colored dress that enhanced my skin and disguised my thinness. She also suggested shoes, a small handbag, and even recommended a hair salon where they could style my hair. "You look beautiful," the saleswoman said when I looked at myself in the full-length mirror, and for the first time in months, I saw myself as beautiful too. The dress made me look dignified, elegant, like a lady who deserves respect and admiration. "This dress was made for you," she added, adjusting some details. "Your date won't be able to take his eyes off you." After buying the dress, I went to the recommended hair salon where a professional stylist took care of my gray, damaged hair. "We're going to give you a modern cut and a soft color to cover the grays," she said as she analyzed my face. "You have very nice features. You just need to enhance them a bit." 3 hours later, when I looked in the mirror, I almost didn't recognize myself. I looked like a completely different woman. Someone worthwhile. Someone worthy of being loved. The night of the dinner arrived faster than I expected. A sharp-dressed driver arrived at my house exactly at 7 o'clock in a black car that shone like a mirror. My neighbors peeked curiously through their windows, wondering what was happening at the house of the poor widow who never received visitors. I felt like Cinderella going to the ball as the driver opened the door for me with ceremony. The Palace Hotel was the most luxurious in the city, a place where only very wealthy people went for special celebrations. The lobby had marble columns, crystal chandeliers, and carpets so thick that my steps made no noise. The hotel manager was waiting for me at the reception. "Mrs. Morales, Mr. Herrera is waiting for you in the main restaurant. Please allow me to escort you." My heart was beating so fast as I walked down the elegant hallway that I thought everyone in the hotel could hear it. How would Vincent receive me? Would he be disappointed when he saw me in person? Would we have anything to talk about after so many years apart? All my fears vanished when we reached the restaurant entrance, and I saw him waiting for me. Vincent was standing by a window table dressed in an elegant gray suit, his white hair perfectly combed, and those same kind eyes I remembered from our youth. When he saw me, his face lit up with a smile so genuine and full of joy that my eyes filled with tears. "Julia," he murmured, approaching me with open arms. "My dear, beautiful Julia." His hug was warm, long filled with decades of stored love and renewed hope. "You are more beautiful than I remembered," he whispered in my ear, and from the tone of his voice I knew he meant it. It wasn't the empty courtesy of someone lying to be polite. It was the genuine admiration of a man who had dreamed of this moment for over 50 years. "Vincent, I can't believe you looked for me after all this time." He took my hands in his, and I noticed they were also trembling slightly. "Julia, I have spent more than 50 years wondering what would have happened if we hadn't been separated. Now I finally have the chance to find out." We sat at the table he had specially reserved for us, overlooking the hotel's illuminated gardens. The waiter brought us champagne without us asking courtesy of Vincent. "To reunions that are worth waiting for," he toasted, raising his glass, "and to the second chances life gives us." For the next 3 hours, we talked non-stop, catching up on our lives, remembering moments from our youth, laughing, as if the years hadn't passed. Vincent told me about his career as a doctor, his travels around the world, his happy marriage, but that he had always kept a special place for the memory of our first love. I told him about my marriage, about Michael, about the years of hard work, but I omitted the most painful details of my current situation. "Julia," he said, taking my hand across the table as dinner was ending. "I know this may sound rushed after just one night, but I don't want to waste another day. Would you like to come live with me? Not as a guest, but as my partner, as the woman you should have always been in my life." Vincent's words left me breathless. Live with him. After a lifetime of sacrifice, of loneliness, of feeling invisible and disposable, a wonderful man was offering me not just love, but a new life filled with dignity and respect. "Vincent," I murmured, feeling tears begin to roll down my cheeks. I don't know what to say. This is like a dream." "Then say yes," he replied gently, squeezing my hand. "Julia, I have a large house that feels empty without the right person to fill it with life. I have more than enough resources, so you'll never have to worry about money again. But more importantly, I have a heart that has been waiting to come home to you for over 50 years." His words were like a healing balm to my wounded soul. That night, Vincent took me to see his house, a beautiful mansion on the outskirts of the city, with huge gardens, water fountains, and rooms filled with art and books. "This would be your room," he said, showing me a complete suite with a balcony overlooking the garden. "But I hope that one day when you feel ready, you will share mine." His respect for my timing, his gentleness, his way of making me feel like a queen, after years of feeling like a beggar, moved me to tears. "Yes," I finally said, surprising myself with the firmness of my decision. "Yes, I want to live with you, Vincent. I want to try to be happy again." His smile lit up the whole room, and when he hugged me, I felt as if I had found the home I had been searching for my whole life without knowing it. The following days were like living in a fairy tale. Vincent sent his staff to my old house to pack my few belongings and bring them to the mansion. He bought me new clothes, took me to elegant restaurants, and showed me the city as if I were a tourist visiting a magical place. "I want to make up for lost time," he would say whenever I protested his generosity. "I want to give you everything you should have always had." But life has curious ways of completing circles. 3 weeks after moving in with Vincent while enjoying breakfast in the garden of our home, I received a call that would change everything again. It was Michael, and for the first time in months, his voice sounded desperate. Mom, where are you?" he yelled into the phone with obvious panic. "I went to your house and it's empty." "The neighbors told me you moved, but they don't know where. Are you okay? Where are you living?" The irony was cruel. For months I had prayed for a call from him, and now that it finally came, I no longer needed it. "I'm fine, Michael," I answered with a calmness that surprised me. "I'm living with someone very special." There was a long silence on the other end of the line, as if Michael couldn't process what he had just heard. "With someone who— Mom, what's going on?" "With Vincent Herrera," I replied, feeling a strange satisfaction as the tables turned. "A wonderful man who loves and values me as I deserve to be valued." Michael's breathing became ragged, as if he were having a panic attack. "Mom, I need to see you. We need to talk. Can you give me the address where you are?" "Why do you want to see me, Michael?" I asked with a coldness I didn't know I possessed. "You didn't call me once for months. When I tried to contact you, your wife hung up on me." "What is suddenly so urgent?" I heard sobs on the other end of the line, and for a moment my mother's heart softened, but Vincent took my hand, giving me strength. "Mom, please. Rebecca and I— things are not good between us. She left me. She ran off with another man and took all the money we had saved. I lost my job too because the company went bankrupt. I have no one else. Mom, you're all I have left." Michael's words hit me like a slap of reality. Rebecca, the woman who had made me feel like a burden, who had manipulated my son to push him away from me, had turned out to be exactly what I had seen from the beginning, a heartless gold digger. And now Michael, after months of ignoring me, came running back to Mom when his perfect world had collapsed. "I'm very sorry, Michael," I said sincerely, because despite everything, he was still my son, and it pained me to see him suffer. But I can no longer be your safety net every time things get tough. For 73 years, I have lived for others, sacrificing for others, and I have finally found someone who wants to live for me. Mom, please just give me a chance to explain everything. Michael pleaded, his voice cracking. I was wrong. I was terribly wrong. Rebecca made me believe you were the problem, that I had to choose between you two. I was an idiot, a bad son, but now I understand everything. Michael, I said firmly, but without cruelty, you can come visit me if you want, but on my terms. This is the address. I gave him Vincent's address and hung up feeling a mix of sadness and liberation. Vincent hugged me from behind as I looked out at the garden. Are you okay, my love? He asked in that sweet voice I had learned to love in such a short time. I know it must be hard to hear your son suffering. I turned in his arms and looked him in the eyes. "I'm fine," I said honestly. "For the first time in years, I am where I deserve to be." 2 days later, Michael arrived at the mansion in an old, dented car, very different from the new truck he had used to take my things. When Vincent opened the door, I saw Michael's eyes fill with astonishment at the luxury surrounding him. "Good morning," Vincent said politely but firmly. "You must be Michael. I am Vincent Herrera, your mother's partner." Michael entered the house as if in a trance, looking at the elegant furniture, the works of art, the fresh floral arrangements Vincent had delivered weekly to brighten my day. "Mom," he murmured when he saw me coming down the grand staircase in a turquoise dress Vincent had bought me. You look incredible." "Thank you, Michael," I replied, maintaining my composure. "Please sit down. Would you like some coffee? Vincent makes delicious coffee." The irony was not lost on either of us. Now I was the one offering hospitality in an elegant house, while Michael was the uncomfortable, out-of-place visitor. "Mom, I need you to know how sorry I am," Michael began, with tears in his eyes. "Rebecca manipulated me. She made me believe you were possessive, that you were stopping me from being happy. She convinced me I had to choose between you, and I chose wrong. I chose very wrong." "And what happened to Rebecca?" I asked without emotion in my voice. Michael hung his head in shame. "She left with my boss. It turns out they had been having an affair for months. She took all our money, sold the furniture. She even took the paintings that were yours. Everything you made me give her, she took from me in one night." The poetic justice of the situation did not escape me. The paintings his father had bought with such love, the television where we had shared so many nights, the refrigerator that had stored family meals for decades, all had ended up in the hands of a woman who disappeared from Michael's life as quickly as she had appeared in mine. "Mom," Michael continued, looking at me with desperation, "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but could you help me one more time? I have nowhere to live, no job, nothing. I only have you." His words transported me back to all the years I had spent being his salvation, his support, his constant sacrifice. But this time, things were different. "Michael," I said gently but firmly, "I forgive you because you are my son, and I will always love you. But I can no longer be your solution to every problem. I have found my own happiness, and I am not going to sacrifice it again for anyone." Vincent came closer and placed his hand on my shoulder. "Michael," he said with authority, but without cruelty, "your mother has suffered enough. Now it is time for her to live for herself. I can help you find a job and a place to live, but on one condition, that you respect the new life your mother has built." Michael looked at both of us and finally understood that he had lost his mother forever, not through death, but by choosing the love of a manipulative woman over the unconditional love I had given him his whole life. "I understand," he murmured, "and you are right. Mom deserves to be happy." 6 months later, Vincent and I were married in a small but beautiful ceremony in the gardens of our home. Michael was present, already working at a job Vincent had helped him get, living alone, but finally learning to be independent. During the ceremony, as Vincent and I exchanged rings, I knew I had found not only a second love, but a second chance to live the life I always deserved. And you, who have listened to me this far, what would you do in my place? Would you have forgiven so easily? Would you have taken the second chance at love that life offered you? Sometimes losing everything is exactly what we need to find what we truly deserve. 5 years have passed since that terrible day when Michael and Rebecca arrived with the truck to take everything I had left of my previous life. Now, as I write these lines from the terrace of my beautiful home, surrounded by flowers that Vincent plants especially for me, I can't help but smile when I remember how naive I was to think my life had ended at 73. Vincent and I live like newlyweds, traveling the world, discovering places I had only seen in magazines, eating in elegant restaurants where the waiters treat me like a queen. Every morning I wake up in silk sheets, have breakfast on fine china, and dress in clothes that make me feel beautiful. But the most important thing is waking up next to a man who looks at me every day as if I were the most precious gift life has ever given him. Michael comes to visit us once a month, always respectful, always grateful. He has learned to live alone, to work hard, to value the simple things he once took for granted. Sometimes I see him looking at our house with nostalgia, not for the luxury, but for the love that fills every corner. "Mom," he said on his last visit, "I never thought I'd see you so radiant, so happy. I'm glad to know that someone is finally giving you everything you always deserved." Rebecca, as we found out by chance, lost all the money she stole from Michael in bad investments and now lives in a small apartment working as a secretary. The man she left my son for abandoned her when she ran out of money. Life has perfect ways of delivering justice without us having to lift a finger for revenge. A few months ago, Vincent proposed something that filled my heart with joy. "Julia, would you like us to help other women who are going through what you went through? We now have a foundation that helps elderly women abandoned by their families. We give them financial and emotional support and remind them that it's never too late to start over. Mrs. Linda, my old neighbor, comes to visit often and never stops telling me I look like a different person. Julia, your skin is glowing. Your eyes are bright. You walk straight like a queen," she says, laughing. "What's your secret?" And I always give her the same answer. The secret is to be with someone who loves you for who you are, not for what you can give. The old house where I lived so many years of loneliness is now rented to a young family with small children. Sometimes I pass by on my way to the market and hear laughter coming from the windows, see children's clothes hanging in the yard, smell home-cooked food. It makes me happy to know that those walls that once witnessed my sadness now house the happiness of others. My hands are no longer calloused from desperate survival sewing. Now I use them to caress Vincent's cheeks, to write letters to the women of our foundation, to plant flowers in our garden. My eyes no longer cry from loneliness, but from happiness every time Vincent brings me coffee in bed or sings me songs from our youth. Yesterday I turned 78, and Vincent organized a surprise party in the garden with all the women from our foundation, with Michael and his new girlfriend, a simple, hardworking girl who treats me with genuine respect, and with Linda and other neighbors who never expected to see me live as an elegant and respected lady. When I blew out the candles on my cake, I made a very simple wish that all women who feel invisible, disposable, worthless, find their own Vincent. Not necessarily a man, but that person, that situation, that opportunity that reminds them of their worth and restores the dignity they should never have lost. During the party, one of the women from our foundation approached me crying. "Mrs. Julia," she said, "you saved my life. When I came here 6 months ago, I thought I had nothing left to offer the world. Now I know that the best years of my life can be ahead of me, not behind." These words reminded me of something fundamental. Sometimes we have to hit rock bottom to realize we deserve to be at the top. Sometimes we have to lose everything to discover that we are much more valuable than we thought. Sometimes we have to be rejected by the wrong people to be found by the right ones. If there is one thing I have learned in these last few years, it is that it is never ever too late to start over. It doesn't matter how old you are, how many mistakes you've made, how many people have made you feel worthless. There is always a second chance waiting for you somewhere. And to you who have reached the end of my story, I want to tell you something important. Do not let anyone make you feel that you are disposable. Do not sacrifice your happiness for people who do not value your sacrifices. Do not settle for crumbs of love when you deserve the whole feast. Life is too short to live feeling small, invisible, worthless. You are important, you are valuable. You deserve to be loved and respected. And if someone cannot see that, then they are not the right person to be in your life. Now I'm going to finish writing this because Vincent is waiting for me to go for a walk in our garden, holding hands like two teenagers in love. At 78, I finally understood that true love knows no age and that happiness is always, always worth the wait. And you, what are you waiting for to claim the life you deserve?